Oh, there I am. Hi, guys. Carrie's having some technical difficulties, and he should be joining us shortly. That'll give us a couple minutes for people to get in. Hi, guys. How y'all doing today? Hopefully good.
Oh, sorry. You on?
Yes. Hi, Kim. Hi, Happy. Just waiting on Carrie, guys. Bob, did you make it in here yet? Nope. Kim, do you want to moderate the chat for us today? I need somebody to moderate that chat. Excuse me. Thank you, Kim. If anybody has a group that they want to share this with, today's talk is going to be outside of Discus, as we're just going to talk about the bacteria in the aquariums and the different problems they can present. So if you have a local group that you want to share it with, by all means, feel free to do so. Thanks, Kim. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Let's see. Okay. So, thanks, Kim. Kim reminded me that I need to put this out in some of the groups, and I hadn't copied the link yet. So I need to get doing that. So copy. He's having technical difficulties. Carrie is going to join us when he gets around those technical difficulties. Second group. Sorry, guys, I'm here. I'm just working on getting this live stream out a little bit. Okay, I think that's enough. Carrie is not here yet. I guess we'll go ahead and start. I posted a week or so ago in the groups, and I asked the first question was, what makes the aquarium cloudy? And I realized that wasn't the question that I wanted answered. So I changed the question to, what is a bacteria bloom? And I had a lot of really good answers. And the first answer that I got was actually the one I was looking for. And the person answered that it was when your beneficial bacteria starts blooming and clouds the water. But something I wanted to let you guys know about is, just because you have a bacteria bloom doesn't mean that it's your beneficial bacteria. When you have a bacteria bloom, the first thing you need to do is check your water parameters and make sure everything is good. We had a bacteria bloom in one of our tanks, and the water parameters were normal. Everything was fine. And all of the fish started shedding slime coat. They started getting sick. And what we ended up finding out was that the bad bacteria, your opportunistic bacteria, can also bloom, and they can affect your fish. And that's something that people really, really need to really pay attention to. I keep thinking I want to, I agree, Kim. I would love to open with questions about bacteria on this one, if anybody has any before we start, because I'm going to go over some of the bad bacteria that's in our tanks. Does anybody have questions about the bacteria in the tanks at this point? And I'm going to give that a couple of minutes because I have a delay over here on the chat. Thank you for sharing it. Well, it's not about the good bacteria versus the bad bacteria. It's simply anytime that you get excess nutrients in the water, ours came from my medication. It was a pre-mixed medication that had fillers in it, and we do not know what the fillers are. That filler most likely had the correct nutrients for that bacteria to bloom. And a lot of times that's not a good thing. You really have to be careful when you're treating. Kim, lots and lots of water changes, and maybe add salt to the water. You really need to do really big water changes. Drake, you never have a clean tank. When you grow your nitrifying bacteria, you are also growing the other bacterias. They're always there. There is no way you can get rid of it. That is the reason that we tell you that water changes are preventative medication. Water changes. The more you change your water, the lower your bacteria count in the tank is going to be. Happy that's something that a lot of people have issues with. I'm assuming these 1.5-inch fry are around that 4 week mark. And that is something that has to be dealt with differently. And I'm not really going to talk a lot about medications other than a few. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. A lot of people recommend different treatments, and I honestly, other than the water changes and adding salt to the water, I really don't have anything I want to recommend for that right now. Um, Joseph, your bacteria nodes, I mean, some of them are just prone to it. They have them. You need to water, change your water on your tank when they have them. Hang on just a second. Carrie messaged me. Still having technical difficulties. Let's see. Yeah, I think we need to delete that one. No, Adnan, the water changes don't affect the bacteria. The bacteria live in your filter system. They're not floating around in the tank. They're not in the water. They're actually in the filter. There's a very, very small amount that floats around in your tank. When you see them in your tank, that's when you're having a bacteria bloom. Okay. Back in. Sorry, we had a spammer and I have now muted him. Yeah, and then that was a good question. A lot of people also think that the substrate also carries the bacteria. Your bacteria grows in your filtration mostly. You can have some in the substrate, but you have to keep in mind that when you have substrate, you also have the bacteria we really don't want to grow in there. And that's, yeah. Carrie's supposed to be here, Nigel. He is having some difficulties, so I'm hoping he's coming in. Ammonia is the bacteria's food. As long as you have fish in the water, you should have the ammonia in the water. See, Carrie, I told you, you need to hurry up. Everybody's waiting on you. When you have a new system, you can buy the beneficial bacteria bottled. I don't know how well it works. We don't use it. We cycle with the fish in the tank. We use prime to lock the ammonia so it doesn't harm the fish. We use salt to help keep the gills from being damaged by the ammonium nitrate. It doesn't actually take that long to cycle it with the fish in the tank. Oh no, please, more questions. They're awesome questions, because these are some of the things that I absolutely wanted to touch on, and I absolutely love it. Because I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on these bacteria at some point. So no, it wasn't Carrie that I muted. It was somebody else. So all right, any more questions? No, go ahead, ask. Please remember there's a delay between me talking and you guys actually hearing me. So keep that in mind. It takes me a minute. All right, I'm going to hit Happy's question. Happy, I use anywhere from 1 tablespoon per 10 gallons to probably 1 tablespoon per gallon, maybe even 2 tablespoons per gallon in some cases. It depends on how bad sick they are and what I really think they need. Joseph Martin. How many various bacteria are known? All of them. All of them cause specific ailments. I mean, they're all different. They all can affect the fish in different ways. Some of the nitrifying bacteria can also affect the fish. They're not as harmful as some of the others. And I'm not going to cover all of them because there are too many. There are way too many for me to cover all of them. And then we typically see an ammonia drop after a few days. And the nitrite takes about a week or so. Yes, Joseph, I'm going to go through the most common because those are the ones we're going to see the most. Absolutely. All right, more questions? I'm going to ask you guys one and see if you guys can answer. What are the names of some of your nitrifying bacteria? Sorry, guys, I'm waiting to see if I get any answers. It doesn't look like I'm getting any. Bob. How about nitrobacter? You guys remember hearing about that one? Nitrobacter is your nitrite eating bacteria. They turn your nitrites into your nitrates. Does anybody know the name of the one that turns the ammonia into the nitrite? No, Muhammad, there's not any bacteria that reduces the pH that I have heard of. Joseph. Nitrosomonas is the one that eats your ammonia and turns it into nitrite. I got some interesting stuff that I just found this out, and it's still under the research for how it can be used. And this is actually something that I'm excited about as a hobbyist because we all try to fight with nitrate. And it doesn't mean, and it's not going to replace your water changes. And it's, but it is an absolutely amazing thing to know about. And it is called, and I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to call it bacillus. It's Bacillus. And they're still researching this bacteria. And it is a gram-positive bacteria. And it reduces pathogens in the water. And the pathogens that they're specifically looking at are the ammonia, the nitrite, and the nitrate. It is also seen to destroy certain types of bacteria that we don't want in aquariums and that sort of thing. That one is real interesting. It's still under research for how it can be used, but I think that may be something that we will in the future start seeing in the hobby itself. And that is Bacillus megaterium and Bacillus cereus. And there's a couple of other ones too. And I am skipping that one. Has anybody ever heard of Vibrio? Vibrio is a gram-negative, and it is an opportunistic bacteria, which most of the bacteria we're going to talk about are opportunistic bacteria. This one causes erratic swimming, hemorrhagic patches on the skin and areas around the anus, the base of the pelvic and tail fins, and a hemorrhagic peritoneum and some of the visceral organs. So this is mostly going to be an internal infection. And this is a lot of what we find in, in the aquariums. The only way you can really, and I'm going to go ahead and put this out there, the only way you can really diagnose a bacteria is to have a necropsy performed or have a veterinarian do a bacterial culture. I have grown cultures and I know how to grow cultures, but when I looked up the cultures that I would need to grow for the bacterial infections in the aquarium, there is absolutely no way without an SEM microscope that I can even begin to start. So even as much as I know how to do, I can't even do that. I use a veterinarian. I recommend it if you have a veterinarian in your area that works with aquatic animals, that you get with them. Because if you do have something come up, you're going to want to know what it is. You're going to want to know how to treat it in case it comes up again. I've done it. I've sent 2 fish for necropsy so that I know what's going on with them. But that is one of the few bacterias that you cannot really look at it and say, this is the Vibrio. We'll move on to one that you can, and that's Flavobacterium columnar. It's also a gram negative. It causes the white, almost looks like a fungus on the head around the gills. This one infects the gills and causes skin ulcers. This one, it can be fatal, and it can be fatal very, very quickly. So you really have to know what to look for and what to treat it with. And like I said, this one causes skin ulcers. And the reason that I'm going through this is because of those skin ulcers. They all look different. All of these bacteria cause skin ulcers that look different, but that is not always the case. Some of them are internal, some of them are gills, some of them are in different areas of the body specific. This particular one is around the head, the face, the mouth, and the gills. And it looks kind of like, it really looks kind of like a fungus. The damage done looks more like hole in the head. If you cure it and but you're still going to have the scarring from it, and it looks kind of like hole in the head in a way, but it's not up on the head. It's usually around the mouth, around the gills. Something that this one is interesting. We had an issue in our tank. All of our tanks are now bare bottom because of a bacteria that grows in the substrate. Flavobacterium columnar actually colonizes hard surfaces. So it can live on your tank. It can live on your decorations. It can just anywhere. So this is why when you clean your tank, wiping the glass, wiping everything down is very, very important when you do your water changes. The water changes themselves lowers your bacteria count in the water column, which is good for the fish. But you also need to wipe your glass. You need to wipe your decorations. You need to wipe your plants. And this helps out a lot with the flavobacteriums because they are nasty and they do grow very quickly, and they can kill your fish very, very quickly, probably within 48 hours. Some of these I don't know a lot about. This one I found interesting because I had a case of somebody's fish in one of the local groups, and it wasn't a discus, that had missing scales on his side. And, I'm over here, and this was yesterday. I'm over here looking this up, and Plesiomonas, and I'm not even going to try to do the specific name because I'm beyond that one. That one's beyond my vocabulary. But Plesiomonas, and it's a gram negative, and it causes blackening of the body, shedding of scales, fin rot, hemorrhaging, and fluid in the abdomen. So most of that is external. I think something like nitrofurazone would cover that. But I've never seen a bacteria that causes scales to be shedding. I always thought when I had, scales missing, I thought it was fighting in the tank or something like that. In this case, it's, a bacteria that can cause it. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Hugh Discus. I'm going to look that one up in just a moment. I've already got it pulled up in Google Scholar because that is not on my list. And you guys understand, I'm playing this by ear. None of this, I did some research on the bacteria. Some of them I've already researched and just wrote down some notes on. I do not know all of the bacteria. Nobody really knows all of the bacteria. If you've seen a bacteria and you want to know more about it, please let me know. The one that was just mentioned, I have not seen it. And it was not listed in some of my research. So I'm going to look that one up in just a minute. Okay, the next one is going to be Pseudomonas. It's gram negative. And you'll see most of these are gram negative. From the gram negative bacterias, all of them appear to be opportunistic, which means if fish are in good health and your fish are in a good environment, you will never see an infection from one of these bacteria. And Pseudomonas fluorescens is another one. It's gram negative. It causes fin rot. Most of you have seen fin rot. You don't know what to treat it with. It's gram negative, so a gram negative antibiotic. Nitrofurazone is a good one. Something to know about this one for those who have plants and stuff, CO2 slows the growth of this bacteria. And doses greater than 100. Okay, and the pH doesn't change it. I'm sorry, I had to read that because I didn't know what I wrote down. What all the medications can be used, like nitrofurazone for external. Actually, nitrofurazone can also be used for some of the internal infections, but it depends on what it is. The better choice for internal is kanamycin, which is also a gram negative antibiotic. And it needs to be added to food and actually fed to the discus if that's possible. Okay. The next one is Shigella putrefaciens, however you say it. I'm not good with the names of this stuff. It is another gram negative opportunistic bacteria. It was once considered only a saltwater pathogen, but it is a freshwater pathogen as well. And it causes skin disorders. Same with most of the other ones. It can cause skin ulcers. I have seen pictures of the skin ulcers from this one. They are actually round, kind of like a quarter, and they can either be bloody and open, or they can be covered in white, which looks like a fungus. So that one was really interesting thing to note, because all of the skin patches that I saw with this one were all the same, but they could be anywhere on the body. It also causes hemorrhaging in the internal organs. So it's another one that's just, if you're not on top of it and you're not ready to go, that one will probably take your fish out. Citrobacter is also gram negative. It's an anaerobic. Most of them are anaerobic. Some of them are aerobic. That one actually causes gastroenteritis. So what happens when you get gastroenteritis? in a discus or in any fish, it causes white poop. And this is a good one for me to use and as an example, because I see all the time, I see people, my fish has white poop, and I see, oh, it's parasite. It's not always a parasite. Sometimes it's a bacteria. Sometimes it's just stress. One big factor, if you've got white poop and that fish is acting normal and that fish is eating, I wouldn't treat it with anything at all. I might do an Epsom salt bath to see if it clears it out, but I wouldn't do anything to a fish that's still eating and still acting normal. If they start acting like hanging in the back or turning dark or stop eating, then yeah, I would start looking at a treatment. That's another good thing to have a vet for, because if you don't know what you're looking for in the poop, you don't know what's going on. They can actually take a poop sample and look for spiro, or they can look for roundworms or find evidence of tapeworms. So that you know. Otherwise it's just a guess and you're throwing meds at it, and the meds are making more white poop and it's upsetting their stomachs. And you know, if you throw too many meds at them, you're shutting down kidneys and you're destroying their liver, and you know, it can happen. So you have to really try to figure out what's going on. I'm going to look up the Gyrodactylus. I think that is on a parasite side, but I've got it pulled up. I haven't looked at it yet. And yes, I smoke, so y'all bear with me here, okay? Let's see, what else can I do? Okay, let's go to the next one. This was the septicemia in the blood and the gastroenteritis. Just keep in mind that not all white poop comes from parasites. Edwardsella is a gram negative, and that one causes blood infection, septicemia. I could not find anything on how to detect it. That one may be something that we all need to go and look at to try to find. And I understand I spent hours yesterday looking up some of these, because some of them I've never looked very hard at, and that was one of them. And I'm probably going to do more research on that one after this, because I'm curious now on how you would detect that without a veterinarian. And I am skipping this one for right now because that's one of my favorite topics. Mycobacterium. This one is a tough one, and I did talk briefly about this in another live stream, and I actually made an error in that live stream. And I removed that section of it because the way that I said something did not come out right. Mycobacterium. One of the subclasses is tuberculosis. And that does not really live, I think, in the water, but there is another bacteria in the same clade. It's called Marinum, and that is found in the water, and it is found in freshwater, and it can infect humans. So, you know, some of these bacteria are dangerous to people. They're dangerous to your fish. And I'm going to be honest, I've been exposed to probably all of these over the years. I've been doing this for too long not to be. Last week, I took a lung full of water trying to siphon a tank. So again, I know we've all been there. That one actually can cause gastroenteritis in humans. It can cause several different things, and they're looking into the tuberculosis, tie to the tuberculosis and that sort of thing. So that's going to be interesting to see what all they find in the Marinum and how they connect all that together. Okay, let's go into Aeromonas. I spent 2 years studying Aeromonas. And the reason that I spent 2 years studying Aeromonas is because I lost a fish. And she had a very small cut, and it was white. And I showed it to somebody, and she said, well, we don't know what it is. We think it may be column there. And she said, you have to start treatment like right now. She said, it's fatal. They die within 48 hours. I started treatment right now. Over the next 7 days after we started treatment, that wound doubled in size and then tripled in size. And it took the entire side of the fish. It was an open, bloody, nasty mess. And it broke my heart. So she ended up getting septicemia and she passed away. But the fact that nobody knew what it was, and I had seen it in multiple posts. I had one in the last few days, and I was very sad because I knew when I saw the fish that he probably was not going to make it, and he didn't. It's a very nasty disease. I had it again about 9 months into my research, trying to find out what this was. I had an angelfish come down with it. And we ended up, I euthanized the fish. I took it to my local vet. I packed it in formalin and I shipped it off to Florida and found out that this was Aeromonas salmonicida. And it causes a lot of different problems. That particular one is not the only one, and that is also not very common in aquariums. It was just our luck that our water system apparently can grow the salmonicida. What is common is Veroni, Aeromonas veroni, which causes similar symptoms. That one is very common in warm water climates. It's very common in aquariums. All of these bacteria that I've mentioned are opportunistic, which means that as long as your fish are healthy, as long as their environment is healthy, you've gone in there, you're doing your water changes, and keeping everything cleaned off, wipe it down, wipe your decorations down, you shouldn't have an issue with it. It's when they get stressed, when the bacteria begin to bloom through nutrients in the water, through whatever reason, that you can have issues. I can't say enough, water changes are a preventative because they lower the amount of bacteria in your water. All right, I'm going to go back to this one, and this is going to be the last one that I'm going to talk about because this one is also common in the water. This one is a little bit different because first off, it's not gram negative, it's gram positive. This is one of the few bacteria that you need erythromycin or amoxicillin to treat. I don't recommend treating with those medications. I don't even keep them on hand. I don't even have them in my fish room, and I've got, well over 100 fish. I've got several hundred fish. It is gram positive, and it is also not an opportunistic bacteria. It's a virulent, aggressive bacteria, which means that your fish immune system, if it's just, just not up to par, too much inbreeding or whatever, and something has damaged that immune system, this particular bacteria can be fatal. I mean, it's very, very aggressive, and it's called streptococcal. And I know that you guys have all heard that one because guess what? We get it. We can give it to the fish. It causes the distended abdomen, like bloating or dropsy. It can cause ulcers. It can cause pop-eye. Sometimes it can be there and cause no symptoms whatsoever and still have an infection. One thing that interested me with this particular one is that it can cause spinning, whirling, and erratic swim, which I find that very, very interesting because we don't know what causes whirling disease. And I don't think this is necessarily it, but I do find it interesting that it does have those symptoms. I want to see, do you guys have any bacteria that you want to discuss? Because I can definitely go and look some up. These are just the most common in the aquarium. Most of them, I think all of these that I have written down are gram negative, except for the streptococcal. Yeah. And you guys are very welcome. I want to help you keep your fish healthy. That's all it's about, is keeping everybody's fish healthy. I mean, I'm not in it for money. I don't make any money by helping you guys. I don't care. I mean, it's not about that. It's about these fish. It's about the hobby. Because if everybody's fish start dying off and, you know, they don't know what's going on and they get so frustrated and they quit the hobby. But it can be easier than that. We can all help each other. We can learn from each other and keep the fish healthy. Well, it looks like this one might be very, very, very short. Let's see. I do have a website I want to pull up. I don't know if you guys watched the thing with Dr. Ruth the other night, or Dr. Floyd the other night. That was amazing. She's an amazing veterinarian. Absolutely amazing. Here's a question for you guys. Do you know how many species of marine and ornamental fish there are in the hobby? How many of each one? Does anybody know the answer to that one? Because I just found that out and that was interesting. I'm going to tell you, from the freshwater fish, there are 4,500 species in the hobby. From the saltwater side, there are 1,450 species of fish. I thought that was interesting. I actually found that in one of the papers I was reading. Okay, I want to go back to one of the bacteria. Because I'm sitting here looking at that paper because it reminded me of what I wanted to talk about on one of them. And it's more than one of them, and I don't know which ones, but Aeromonas bacteria, and I believe it's all of the strains of Aeromonas, actually can go airborne. They can move from tank to tank in the air. So if you have 3 aquariums in a room, and one of those aquariums has an outbreak of Aeromonas, and you know it's Aeromonas, you need to watch all of those tanks because it can go from tank to tank in the air. And some of these bacteria are airborne bacteria, or can be airborne bacteria. Go to the other page that I was looking at that was interesting. I wish I could pull these pages up, but unfortunately, I do not have enough experience with Zoom to figure out how to do that. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Any more questions from any of you guys while I'm looking for this? Nope. No questions? Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Okay. A share screen button. Y'all, I probably don't need to do that because y'all gonna get bored with that. I'll share a couple things that I found out from Ruth that I actually didn't know. And I can share this in the groups too. She uses salt and she recommends salt. And she said in her meeting with her lecture that if it were her, she would keep salt in the tanks. And I found that, you know, not really odd, but maybe different. I don't know how Corridoras handle salt. I don't know how plecos handle salt. I know that I use the salt for my aquariums, and I've lost the picture somehow. Okay, she was talking about salt for osmoregulation. It's good for during transport handling, wound management, and she says to usually use 5 to 10 parts per trillion. And I thought that was a lot. For saltwater fish, she's talked about lowering the salt content to 16 to 25 parts per trillion. And she also said in a bath, a short-term bath, to use 30 parts per trillion until they roll over, and that's usually 5 to 10 minutes. And that's a lot of salt. I mean, to me, that seemed like a lot of salt, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, I've had discus in salt water quite often, and they seem to do better with it. In my opinion, Kim, that is the absolute best thing you can do to keep the bacteria load down. I use a lot of fresh water. You want to keep the bacteria as low as possible in your tank. Meta, from what I can tell, the most frequent cause of death and ailments in fry is either going to be bacteria or it's going to be parasite. A lot of people blame it on gill flukes. I don't think that that's the only thing it could be. It could be protoopalina. It could be body flukes. There's too many things that could be causing it to really know. And it's not always external. Sometimes it's internal. It could be spironucleus. It could be worms. It could be a lot of different things causing it. Joseph, UV, I don't think will work to kill enough bacteria off. We have UVs. We use it for algae control. But most UVs are not set to kill bacteria. When dealing with yeah, we already did that. I mean, you guys feel free to ask questions. I mean, I just really don't know where else to go with the discussion because, you know, I've seen so many people in the groups, they say, oh, we don't do water changes. I haven't done a water change in 9 months. And I'm sitting there wondering what their bacteria load is. Because, yeah, you're topping it off, but you're not getting rid of the bacteria. Bacteria sit there and multiply and multiply. Eventually, you're going to have a problem and it's going to explode. And that's probably the biggest issue in the hobby is people don't want to do the water changes that are needed to keep your fish healthy. And I don't mean everybody, I just mean some. Like I said, my Aromonas problem didn't start with a bad water quality. It started with a nutrient added with a medication. And that can happen with any bacteria. It does not have to be any specific type of bacteria. It just has to be the right conditions for that bacteria. Could be good bacteria, bad bacteria. Any more questions, guys? I wish more people were here for this one. Joseph, that's a good question, because a lot of people have read and maybe heard that pH makes a difference in the bacteria. And that's one of the things I was looking for in all of the bacteria. And I actually found no bacteria that was affected by pH. Most of them said that the higher or lower pH had no effect. Now, the temperature may be another thing, but at this point, I honestly do not recommend changing your temperature of your tank if you think you have a bacterial infection. And the reason is Salmonella is a cool water bacteria, which means its optimum temperature is high. Optimum temperature, I believe, was 78 or 79. And Hydrophila, which is another Aeromonas, was a warm water. So a higher temperature had a higher temperature, and I think it was 94 or 95 that it could go in, and the optimum range was probably around 88 or 89. You don't want to really mess with your temperature if you think you've got a bacterial infection, unless you know exactly which bacteria it is that you're dealing with. I don't use a different dosage for fry. You probably should. As far as food medication is dosed by weight. So however much your fish weighs that's how that is calculated. It's based on how much they weigh. As far as the waterborne treatment, I've just used a regular treatment, just the same. As you got to think, these medications are dosed whether your fish is a guppy or a salmon. I mean, nobody has salmon in their tank, but you know what I mean. I'm sure it's different if you get up in size to, like the tunas and stuff like that. I'm sure if they were medicating those, that would be a higher dose. There you go, Kim. All right, guys, it's been an hour. I need some more questions so we can keep this going a little bit longer, because I know somebody's got a really good question. I just don't know what that question is. You're very welcome. No, Adnan. I believe that each category of bacteria, and that's what I went over. I didn't go over actual individual bacteria. I went over Aeromonas. I mentioned Salmonella because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen Hydrophila through others. Hydrophila, I really don't want to see, because the people that had that particular strain, it wiped their entire stock. Just like with that one, the other strains or the other categories, the Edwards Ciela and Plesiomonas, they all have a cold water variety or cold water strain and a warm water strain. The warm water strains, yes, they're going to multiply much faster at a higher temperature. But there's no way to know by looking at your fish which one you have. And even if I were to grow the bacteria in agar and look at it, I'm still not going to know specifically which strain it is because they do look so similar. I'm going to need to go, I would need much better equipment than what I have. I mean, I've got a light microscope. I know how to grow the bacteria in agar, but to actually know which one it is a lot harder. I can maybe tell you which, if it's an Aeromonas or if it's an Edwardsiella or if it's a Plesiomonas, but I couldn't tell you which strain. I wouldn't know if it's a cold water strain or a warm water strain. No, I don't recommend metronidazole for bacteria. Metronidazole has been so overused in the hobby that most of the bacteria are resistant to it. You would definitely need to get a better strain of antibiotic for that. Metronidazole is awesome as for protozoa, but I wouldn't use it for bacterial. I just don't trust it. And that was a good question. They're all good questions. You're welcome. How much does a discus weigh? Well, Joseph, that depends on how big that discus is, how thick that discus is. I've got some that probably weigh a couple pounds, and I've got some that don't weigh very much at all. For that, you would have to have a scale, and you'd have to know how to handle a fish. I don't recommend taking your fish out and handling them if you haven't done it and don't know how to do it. As far as meds, I wasn't going to talk about medications, but I can tell you that nitrofurazone I would have on hand at all times. As I mentioned, most of the bacteria are gram-negative, and it is a gram-negative antibiotic. It does very well in the water. It's more, considering it's in the water, I gear that more toward the external bacterial infections, and most of them are to some extent external. They can go internal. If you think you have an internal bacterial infection, I would feed kanamycin, and I would look for the dosage to add to food. And I would feed it to them. And salt. I would have salt on hand all the time, salt. Epsom salt is good to have on hand. Riddick Plus, if you're bringing in fish and you know you're going to get, some more fish, you're going to get some bottom cleaners, some bottom feeders to clean up the bottom of your tank. And you know that your fish are already here, you need to do your quarantine. Even doing quarantine does not guarantee that you will not have a cross-contamination issue, which is most of the time bacterial. Riddick Plus is a combination of malachite green and formalin. And formalin is a very good external antibacterial medication. It's an oxidizer, but it's a lot safer to use than PP. I don't like PP. We use it to clean tanks. We do not use it on fish. I think I've mentioned that before though. The formalin is just a lot safer to use for that. So, and Riddick has it in there. Safe salt, sodium chloride. And there's a period at the end of that, sodium chloride. It can be table salt, it can be iodized, it can be non-iodized, it can be marine salt, it can be reef salt, as long as it is sodium chloride. Rock salt. No, if your environment for your discus are good and your discus are healthy, meaning you got them from a good supplier, they've been dewormed, they don't have any parasites, and your environment is the way it needs to be, you should never need a medication. I was introduced to discus in 2009, and we never medicated them. We never had to medicate the discus. He had the established tank. He and I met in 2009, and he had an established tank that he had bought adult discus and put in, and they never got sick. Actually, we had blackbeard algae overtake that tank, and that was a nightmare. But those discus never had an issue, not once, and we never medicated them. Now, we've had issues since we've been back in the US, but those were a little bit different stuff we're not used to seeing. And nobody's environment is 100%. There is always going to be something that can stress them. And, enough stress lowers the immune system and allows those bacteria an opportunity. And some of the stressors can be something so simple as, spironucleus got into the tank through a new fish, and the new fish stressed the other ones out. The spironucleus got a foothold and made them sick, and then the bacteria got involved. I mean, it can be something just so innocent. And we had never added anything new to the tank over there, so that kind of kept us at a minimum for stress. Sea salt from the grocery store, as long as it does not have any additives in it. I don't recommend getting something that has additives. It's got to be sodium chloride with nothing in it. But from my understanding, it can be iodized, non-iodized, kosher, rock salt, and everything. I use reef salt. It has a lot of nutrients added to it for the reef tanks. And I just prefer it. It gives added nutrients and helps boost the immune system, I think. And here's something I wanted to let you guys know, because we're forever talking about a healthy diet for the discus. And something that Dr. Floyd said in her lecture was they have only 3 fish that they actually know the nutrient requirements for, and discus is not one of them. Catfish was one, and I cannot remember right offhand the other 2, but she said that those are the only 3 fish that they know the nutrient requirements for. So that's interesting. And that also shows you how important it is to have a varied diet, because you don't know what they actually need. The more foods you have in their diet, the better chances that you're getting the nutrients that they actually need to them. Flakes, granulates, frozen foods, beef heart mix, add your stuff to your beef heart mix, extra vitamins. There's never anything wrong with extra vitamins. And it's so very, very important that they have a good diet and that they have the foods that they need. But you do need to have a good variety of food that you're offering to your fish. And food is important to the health of the fish. All right, more questions, guys? I need questions. Carrie, if you're sitting there watching this after all the technical difficulties, I'm going to kick you in the behind. Oh, you're very welcome. There's probably not going to be much more, Adnan. Probably not. If you guys don't have questions, I'm about to sign off. That's a good question, Mate. I'm glad you asked that. Good, more questions are coming. How would you treat a discus that suddenly begins to swim erratically? The first thing I would do is put them in a quarantine tank, and I would put them in a quarantine tank probably with about 3 tablespoons of salt per 10 gallon. And I would check the water parameters in the main tank. And see, I mean, I'm assuming this is only one fish out of a few fish doing it. If it was multiple fish, I would check the water parameters first, because there's something going on with the water if they're all doing it. But assuming that this is only one fish out of a bunch, I would quarantine it with the salt and watch and see what happens until you know what's going on. It's possible it could be bacterial that's causing it. And that's just, I mean, it takes monitoring to see if the salt helps. If the salt helps, then it may not be anything, just an uncomfortable fish, or it could be something more serious. But you really have to know your fish, and you really have to be able to watch them to know what's going on. But that's what I would do to begin with. Praziquantel or flubendazole. Praziquantel is by far better. I think flubendazole is a good medication. I just like praziquantel a little bit better. Francis, binocular scope versus microscope to identify bacteria. Both of them is hard on the eyes. You would really need to grow a culture. Even if you looked at them under the microscope, I think all of the bacteria that I talked about, except for the strep, are rod shaped. They're all shaped very, very similar. When they're grown in a culture, they also look very, very similar. There are very minor differences between them, and it would be very hard. It would have to be somebody that knows what they're looking at to be able to identify which bacteria it actually is. I also want to mention on the gill flukes, a lot of people are popping up with fish with gill filaments showing, and they're saying, well, I have gill flukes. That's not gill flukes. Those are actually irritated gill filaments. That does not mean that you have flukes. And that irritation can be from bacteria. That irritation can just be from a piece of particle food that got in there. It can be from just about anything. Okay. Well, if that's all the questions, and then we're going to go off now, or I am. I appreciate you guys joining me this afternoon. And I hope that this has at least helped out a little. I mean, I know it's not probably what a lot of you thought that it was going to be. And because I didn't talk about any treatment of any of these bacteria, really. It's a case by case thing. And I do recommend trying to find a vet in your area that you can work with, that will work with you on your fish. Good question, Kim. If you have something going on and you've got a couple of fish that have already died, you've got other fish that are sick, I recommend that you take and ship that fish to a university where they have the facilities to do a pathological examination on the fish. I do realize that it means that you're going to lose a fish, but in the long run, you're going to save the rest of your fish. It's essentially sacrificing the one for the many. It's a very important thing for them as well as for us, because they learn a little bit more each time that they do a pathology on a fish. They may find a bacteria that they didn't know affected fish. They may find, a new protozoa that they didn't know about. And there are so many out there that they don't know. I know, I would love to be able to fund some research for some of the universities, but that is extremely expensive. And when they do get funded, they get funded for specific projects. But even one fish, you send them one fish, and that thing they can learn so much from at these schools and these universities, about the protozoa, about the bacteria, what kind of problems they cause, and I just really think that that's something that's really important. Um, right now I'm doing research on fish that are head standing. Um, I'm hoping we can get some kind of answer resolved on that. I had somebody contact me with a head standing fish, and he was willing to send his off, but his actually corrected with Epsom salt treatment. So it looks like it was just a swim bladder issue, which is good. I'm happy for him. But if more people, have these issues that we don't have an answer for, and they start sending these fish off for pathology, maybe we can get an answer. That's something for you guys to think about, and it is entirely up to you. But it would definitely help the hobby out a lot, for the researchers to know, what we're looking at, what's going on with the fish. Um, it just is a really good way to go. I'm getting more questions now, so let's go back. Myth or reality that you should not mix discus from different breeders? Um, it's a myth. I'm going to go with that, because you can mix the fish. You have to be careful mixing any fish, period. I don't care where they come from. They could be from the same place. They can be from a different place. But let's say they're from the same place. Well, the fish farms that grow these fish, they have multiple ponds. They have multiple types of fish. Different fish have different pathogens. Each of these ponds may have a different pathogen. That group of fish may come from pond A, and the next shipment might come from pond B. Pond B may have something that pond A didn't have. So when they get these fish in, and you go and get them because it's the same supplier, you throw it into the tank, you got a cross contamination issue. And that's where the Riddick Plus comes in with the salt. We're thinking maybe that nitrofurazone may also be a good treatment for cross contamination, but we haven't been able to confirm that yet. But it doesn't matter if they're from the same source, if they're from a different source, if they're different fish, if they're the same fish. Everything needs to be quarantined. Everything. Once you come out of quarantine, you're not always safe, but you're in a better position than you were. I hope that answered that question. How to get them to pathology. That is one good reason to have a veterinarian in your area that you can work with. You can ship a live fish to some places. You cannot ship them to other places. That is on a university to university basis. The University of Florida prefers to have them already euthanized and packed in formalin. But if you call other universities, they may accept a live fish and they'll do the euthanasia. But you do need to contact a pathology department at one of the colleges that you want to send them to. Quarantine procedures. Yeah. Yes, sketchy. It is very much the quarantine procedures. Absolutely. You're all very welcome. a tribute to the hobby. I like that, Joseph. It's not just the hobby. I mean, it's the fish. I mean, I care about the fish and I want to see them healthy. I want to see all of you with healthy, beautiful discus. Joseph, I use the University of Florida. If you can find a vet, if anybody's wanting to send one off, if you're wanting to send one off, you can send them to the University of Florida. And have them do it. But I do believe that you're going to need to get a veterinarian to do an initial biopsy and pack the fish in formalin. And you can always call them because I have actually sent them an entire fish that I had euthanized. So that is a possibility. If it's got the extended gill, I'll just use maybe a tablespoon per 10 gallon. But if it's not eating good, it sounds like you may have something else going on. And yes, Sketchy, your husbandry skills are always the most important part of it. Yes, the University of Michigan. There is a university in, I want to say Minnesota. So I had somebody contact me with some Danios, and I told her to take them to a university. I think it was in Minnesota. There's universities all over the country that have a veterinarian program that actually do pathology on aquarium fish or on fish or aquatic animals. I'm lucky because, I can drive to Florida. It's a long drive. I don't have a veterinarian in my area that will work with fish. I have a veterinarian in my area that works with me and allows me to use their facilities for certain things, but they do not work with fish. Nobody in my area works with fish. So I've done this myself. I haven't had a choice. Yes, Joseph, if enough fish with one problem, okay, let's just say it's head standing, since that's what I'm working on right now. If people in different areas that had headstanders send their fish off to a university and have it checked, if all of those fish have the same problem when they do the pathology, if all of the fish have let's say it's a protozoa. We don't know what it is, but let's say it's a protozoa, and all of these fish that are headstanding have this particular protozoa, then we know that if we treat the fish for this protozoa, that we won't have this issue. And that's kind of how it works. I don't know that Simply Discus could do that. I'm trying to get the NADA involved, which I haven't really talked to them about it yet because of the show that's coming up and everything. They're really busy with that. But I would love to speak with someone about doing something like that. And that is actually how things are found in the aquarium hobby, is people sending their fish for necropsies and that sort of thing. Usually, though, the problems are in the big farms, and that's mostly what they work with, are the big farms. Dr. Floyd is a veterinarian. She works with people in Florida that have the big farm, the fish farms and stuff. I have no opinion. I have absolutely no opinion on who the most reputable breeders are. Absolutely no opinion. Because I do not know all the breeders. Carrie's probably going to kick me in the butt for saying that one. But Carrie is an awesome breeder, absolutely, hands down. As far as reputable, yeah, I would agree with that, Joseph. Carrie Strong is a very, very good breeder. He has some really beautiful fish. Absolutely no doubt about it. I simply do not know. I don't know all the breeders. I know some of them, but I don't know all of them. There you go, Carrie. There's one for you. I'm not sure who Sketchy is, but I'm sure that I know who Sketchy is when I see their name. He is, absolutely. Absolutely. And Carrie is one of those people, he will help you. I mean, he will flat help you if you have an issue. When I had the Aromonas pop up in my tanks, I contacted Carrie. I contacted Sarah Bills. I don't know if you guys know Sarah. She's Cascadia Aquatics, and she sells a lot of the Discus foods. But I contacted Carrie and I contacted Sarah, and we couldn't do a whole lot. We didn't know what it was, but oh, I know who that is. Yes, Carrie is missing in action today. And something that you guys need to know, I don't know where everybody lives. I know that there's a lot of people that are from other countries. And y'all keep in mind that some of y'all are messaging me at 1:30 in the morning. And you're not going to hear back from me at 1:30 in the morning. Is anybody watching from Facebook? Because I haven't even checked the notifications to see if anybody asked questions over there. I don't see any. Okay. Yeah, Carrie is the man, no doubt about it. Is the missing in action man today, but he is the man. Yeah, Joe, I think he had one too many mojitos myself. Yeah, that is a subject I would love to bring up, Sketchy. I found the photo of him with Jack Watley not long ago, and I sent it to Carrie, and I said, "This is my favorite picture I've ever seen." Happy 1 inch fry, and guessing that's around 4 weeks old. They're eating pretty much anything. Beef heart, flakes, baby granulate. Still at that age, you're still going to be getting baby brine shrimp. Um, Everything. I mean, I feed them whatever we feed them, whatever they'll eat. All right, guys. Any more questions before I sign off? Because every time I start to sign off, the questions come. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna sign it off again. Maybe I'll get more questions. And oh yeah, Happy, you asked me 2 questions, didn't you? I didn't catch that. We have uh, about 5 breeding pairs. We have the 4 confirmed pairs, proven pairs. Um, yeah, they sell 1 inch. I don't buy 1 inch. I don't buy from the local fish store either. Um, we have a melon couple that are currently breeding. They produce some really, really pretty melons. They're also producing rose reds, which is interesting. I've got a yellow pigeon with a melon female that are producing some really pretty, probably Marlboros. Um, I've got another melon couple that are they've only got one fry. They've got one swimmer on them right now, but that they're proven, but they just haven't had a good hatch yet. And we've got a couple of different programs going on that we're working on. Let's see. Seagrass. I need to look at Seagrass fish. I haven't seen what Seagrass has. Um, I'd definitely be interested in seeing. I'm always looking at new places and different places. I mean, I like Hans's fish. I like my Stenkers really, really well. And the Heckles I got from Carrie are really nice. So you're busy, Kim. You got 7 pairs with fry. That's a lot. My water change schedule on the grow out tank is every other day, probably close to 90%. Lots and lots of food. Thank you, Francis. Okay. And Sketchy, you're welcome to send me some photos. I would love to see it. I'm curious. We got 4 batches of fry growing right now. How many tanks of discus do I have? I haven't counted them. We just emptied a 150 for the grow out, so I've got 2 batches of grow outs going into that one. I don't know. I've got well over 100 discus. I really don't know how many tanks I have. $30 discus and 100-gallon for the grow outs. That sounds about right. I don't have 30 in my 150, but I mean, that sounds good. And lots of water changes. I might even do more than 30 in a 100-gallon. It would depend on the tank, I think. All right, guys. Any more questions? I'm sitting here boring you guys to death now. All right, then I'm going to cut it short, guys. And I appreciate everybody showing up and asking questions. Absolutely. And I think the next topic may very well be on a tank build. I was under the impression we would be doing it tomorrow. But I think that I haven't heard from the people yet, but we're gonna try to get that here in the next week. And it should be interesting to see. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of information about the build and all of that, but I look forward to doing it for sure. And I appreciate all of you coming and showing up and watching. And any questions that you have, you can always ask on any of the groups. You can put it on any of the Discus Talk posts and it will notify me and I will come and answer any questions that you guys think of later. I don't mind doing that at all. All right, guys, I'm gonna shut it down. Bye, y'all. You're all very welcome. We'll see y'all next time.